that having received the presentation of the activity report and financial statement of the Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency for the year ended 31st December 2017, 31st December 2018, and 31st December 2019, that this committee now consider the activity reports and financial statements so mentioned for adoption as the true and fair view of the state of play for the data or for the worse of the Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency to enable us to present a report to the plenary with our recommendation. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those not in favor say no. Now the matter is before you for consideration. You may raise any issue. All right, board management members do believe that since during the introductory remarks, some cues were given to very important questions, they would want those questions to be addressed, and then we proceed to the consideration. Have you taken note of some of these key issues that were raised? Yes, and would you want to take them one by one, or would you want me to focus on each of them again for your consideration? Yes, go ahead.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. With your permission, I would like to attempt to give a summary of the issues you've raised. So my colleagues also have been taking notes. If there are any issues that maybe I have not captured, I will be more than happy if you can just remind us. But I have taken note of 7 issues that you have highlighted. Issue number 1, you raised the issue of sustainability of the institution beyond government subvention. This was a question you wanted answered, that if has any roadmap or any efforts that it is deliberately undertaken to be able to sustain the institution beyond government subvention. That's number 1. Number 2, you inquired about the nature and character of the assets that GIEPA has. You wanted more clarity on those. You also took note of an area, number 3, about property and equipment. And you wanted this more explanation of what properties we have and what equipment we have. I think this was mentioned in one, I think it's 2018 financial statements. Number 4, you also would like us to disaggregate the investment as per institutions, because we merely catalog institutions in terms of and the investment areas, but they were lumped up. So you wanted us to disaggregate, so you are in a position to be able to find out exactly what each of the investment areas is bringing to GIEPA. Number 5, you also requested more information regarding the investment zones, the export and investment zones, and you also wanted more information regarding the special incentive certificates, the SICs. And you further wanted to know the impact of this on employment and also in terms of the incomes coming to GIEPA, the impact of the economic zones and the SLCs. Number 6, and I'll just paraphrase some of this, it may not necessarily be, you wanted a correlation between businesses and export development. vis-a-vis the types, volumes, etc., etc. And I'm asking us to provide a comparative analysis of such. You also wanted to find out the level of GIEPA's contribution in terms of the facilitation and advocacy we do. What's the level of contribution or its potential in terms of impacting businesses and investments? So you would like this to be demonstrated so that at least we know exactly what the impact is. Lastly, I think you also made mention of advocacy in terms of our strategic focus. You know, how much is the advocacy leveraging our attainment of our corporate mandate and objectives? These were the key areas that I've been able to record. And then, with your permission again, I would like to attempt to say something about the first concern, and then after which I can ask my colleagues to intervene. With regards to the sustainability of GIEPA beyond subvention, as you can see, this is a major challenge for the institution. Perennially, for the period that you have highlighted, from 2017 to 2019, we've seen a dwindling of the subvention of the government. And the paradox is, whilst our incomes are dwindling, our challenges are increasing. And this has not been really helped by the global pandemic, because that has exacerbated our financial situation. But more significantly, I think you made adequate mention of GIEPA's role as mandated under the Act. However, at the operational level, what we have realized is that most of our potential areas of income and responsibility have been, unwittingly divested or taken by other institutions, which is undermining our ability to raise the necessary income. Some of our key responsibilities can be found under the Ministry of Finance, specifically GRA. Others are, I hate to say this, but some of our responsibilities are under the GCCI, which is a membership organization. It's not even a government institution. So our concerns are really that, and again, we are not blaming anybody. It might have been, perennial lack of due diligence or an attempt to really take control of what belongs to us. This could have emanated from maybe lapses within the management or the board in the past years, and our responsibilities and our potential being eroded and finding themselves in areas where they are not supposed to be. But that's the reality on the ground. So we feel if we are able to claw back and we are able to consolidate our mandate based on the Act, our potential for sustainability would greatly be enhanced. This would be by way of an overview that I would give. But then with regards to the specificities of the other issues, I think my colleagues, headed by the CEO, can take on those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and honorable members. To start with, on the issue of sustainability, in 2020-2021, with the approval of the board and the ministry, we introduced a levy called the SIC levy, which is 1% of the total value of investment. This, I think, in 2021, has netted us at least about $24 million. That is first income from 2021. Now, on the issue of sustainability, as alluded to earlier by the chairman, we have we conducted a study tour in the Sister Republic of Senegal, where we meet our counterparts, ASIPEX, EDFM, and EPIX. And we also held discussions with our counterparts both in Nigeria and in Ghana. And what we have discovered is export promotion tools are embedded in these export promotion agencies. But in the Gambia, it's the reverse. We have, for example, the ISRT, which is embedded with the chamber, which we feel is wrong. And we have made representation both to our board, and we have aligned with the board, and we have made representation also to the minister. We have also the ETLS, which is domiciled at the ministry, which again,
The ISRT and
yes.
Otherwise,
Okay, and then we also have the REX, which is embedded at the GRA.
He said, explain the terminology.
acronyms.
Once you say the abbreviation,
ISRT.
ISR is the
Interstate trade transit.
yes,
Interstate trade transit, ISRT.
yes, and
Road
ETLS,
transit, yeah, it's meant for road, goods that is transiting outside the country, between ECOWAS regions, yes. And the ETLS is ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme.
and the REX.
Right is,
yes, you know, it's your area of operation. So after a while,
Yes,
the abbreviation dominates.
absolutely.
And even the, so go ahead and give
Yeah.
us explanation here.
I think,
Elucidate.
with your permission, Chairman, we,
So this ISRT is it a levy of some sort? Or
yes,
payment
it
of
is,
some sort?
it is a fee that is charged for the
It's a fee.
facilitation. Yes, or a levy that is charged to the facilitation.
Okay.
But at the moment, as opposed to the dictates of the Act, it was given to the Chamber of Commerce, which we
So
felt.
it is a fee
Yes.
linked
Mhm.
to trade
The intertrade, that is between ECOWAS countries.
across countries.
Yes.
So a fee is actually levied
Yes,
and collected.
yes.
Okay. And now the collection is done by who as far as Gambia?
It's done by the Chamber of Commerce.
They do the direct collection.
Yes.
Okay.
And this, if you look at both in Senegal, Nigeria, and Ghana, is domiciled at the export promotion agencies that they have. Now, we also,
And in your discussion with the chamber, what, because they are not around, so if you can give us an idea, then we can.
no, I think it's not necessarily anything to do more or less with the chamber. It was a function that the ministry gave to the chamber. So for us, as far as we are concerned, the chamber has not much of relevance in this. It was
Well,
not,
don't relegate them to irrelevance.
yeah.
We must give them due
Absolutely.
consideration as an institution. You know, they are at the receiving end and they are not around. But make them relevant. Don't use the big stick that the ministry just take. So, have you ever had any contact with them to discuss this matter and what are the
I think the chamber sits in our board, and when the ISR issue was tabled at the board, they were present, and they are fully aware of the steps we are making as an institution to claw back our mandate, so that not only will these tools give us, it's not necessarily about
Now,
income.
let's go to the, you know, now, you are not debating with anybody, you are giving us facts.
Yes,
So you are saying a fee is there, it's being collected by the chambers. You don't believe that there is any contradiction between the two institutions. It was a policy decision,
yes,
and now you are dealing with the policy maker,
absolutely,
to be able to address that. So that is one issue,
yes,
and that is your challenge, and how you intend to address it.
yes.
Then the ETLS, ECOWAS trade,
liberalization scheme.
okay. So that one is also a fee?
Yeah, that one is there's a fee or levy on it, but it is also the missile at the ministry.
So
As
the
opposed-
Ministry of Finance,
No, trade.
Ministry of Trade, okay. So they actually receive this one,
Whatever fees is charged.
the fees, okay. And have you followed the fees to know exactly how much is collected annually or not yet?
No, we haven't.
Don't you think you need to establish a committee, ad hoc committee that will actually look into that to actually find out, yes, board?
Recently, we engaged our minister on this, and he agrees, completely with all the.
Yeah, but what, Chairman, how much you approve. Do you know?
No, but
Yeah, that's why we are saying,
yes.
don't you think, you need to form your ad hoc committee
Indeed,
that will look into this gate
sure.
and then show that this is what we are following and this is what we will get.
Absolutely. In
Yeah.
fact, we are putting you on notice.
Yes.
That there's a big
You are
meeting
moving
coming
into
up,
that
and
direction.
we are moving in that direction.
Absolutely.
But I do not want us to limit our discussions only to how much revenue we get. But let us also consider the potential it can bring in terms of other things, institutional sustainability.
Yeah, because I wanted to add on not only the importance of the revenue perspective, but in terms of planning, because we as an export promotion institution.
But bear in mind that, as the board chair has said, the issue is sustainability here.
Yes.
So give us
Okay.
the facts about sustainability. How do you intend?
I think
Outside of subvention.
yeah, if I can recall,
So
we've already introduced an SIC levy. That is 1% of the value of investment that we will facilitate. That as 2021 has bring in at least 25 million.
You've taken note.
Yes, for 2021. Now, what we are looking in terms
You
of
gave us 24, you now give us 25.
no, 24 is okay. It's just now 24 is okay.
Yeah, these are approximation.
Yes. No, these are actuals.
Actual. Okay.
Yes. It could-
Please know that we should have put you on the oath, so make sure that you give us the facts. Otherwise, just say that,
Because
I will send the documents.
Yeah, that's
Don't-
okay.
At least 24.
That's understood. sir.
Don't be accurate if you feel that you have to rely on
Yeah.
your brain and then send us the facts. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Absolutely. That's it. All right.
Okay.
Now, in terms of sustainability, what we feel also that we've covered the area of investment, where we feel that if we have the traditional levy we have introduced will help sustainability. We have also talked about the export tools. Now, the major one that we had here is to do with the enterprise. And what is happening with the enterprise is we have the mandate legally, but there's a problem we have that it becomes every other ministries and institutions activity. And this has staffed us resources for the entrepreneurs. For example, if I give you these projects, when you have projects like Roots or Giraffe coming or all Fast Dev and all these projects, there's always an entrepreneurship component. And that component, unfortunately, is not being implemented by GIEPA. Instead of GIEPA as the institution mandated to carry out that mandate, being capacitized and given the fund to implement so that there will be a sustainability after the end of the project's life cycle. Because we all know that these projects come 3-5 years, they disappear. Who takes over after the project? It would have been GIEPA. So it would have been better if GIEPA was capacitized and given the resources to implement those functions. That way, at the end of the project, GIEPA will still continue. So that is an area that we have been hugely staffed of fund in terms of entrepreneurship development and funding. So this, we believe that we've already tabled with our line ministry, and I've asked the chairman, we will send you an invitation for the committee to attend, export stakeholders meeting, where we will discuss these tools with the exporters as well, and the chamber will be there. So this, we believe that if implemented by government, naturally the institution might not even require subvention from government. Now we move on to the assets. Here we are talking of assets. The properties are at the airport. In 2017-18, GIEPA entered into an agreement with TAF Global Africa, and that's why it's known as GIETAF. And a special purpose company was created called GIETAF, where we hold 35% and TAF holds 65%. As we speak, the project is stalled. We are trying to finalize on the lease, because part of the agreement is GIEPA was to provide an income lease. And during the review of the lease document, there were some errors found on the original lease document for assignment between GIEPA and the civil aviation. And as we speak, the two-line ministries, that is Works and Trade, are working to correct that. So once we correct that, that will kick in. And that is where we also have the property. We have the land and the property. If you remember, those properties were built during the Trade Gateway project. And unfortunately, the ex-president used to use those facilities as the July 22nd park. Rents were due to GIEPA, but finally the rents has to be written off because there was no way of GIEPA collecting rents those days. So if any
What
of,
is the current situation?
now the current situation is the properties are not occupied. We are not accruing any income from them. But like I said earlier, we had an agreement with TAF Africa Global. We created a company called the GIEPA. So because of the issues with the lease, which we are finalizing, and we believe that once that is finalized, this $300 million investment that we are alluding to earlier to create the light manufacturing and the business park would kick in.
Yes. You may have noticed there was some development on the airport fence some 1 year or so ago. And if you
I'm sure the members will want
Yes.
to visit the place.
and if you drive into also, you will see a chain link fence within the airport itself with guide tap. So this project was really conceived and it was going to be very, very impactful on GIEPA's sustainability. However, as he said, it's stalled.
How long ago?
GIEPA is called.
No, how long ago did you
I
visit?
think we started this process from 4 years ago, so
2018.
2018, but it got stalled around
2020.
2020.
Okay.
And again, one useful lesson also we should learn from that. As he said, part of this property, which is a 350 hectares?
No, 150 hectares.
160, well, there's a 168, 153, we don't know it, but it's about 150 hectares of land, and the value of investment is 300 million. There is a developed property already. Currently, GIEPA's rent is unsustainable. Where we are right now, every year the landlord increases, and I think the last year it was 500,000.
600,000.
600, now the landlord has increased it to $1 million. There's already a property developed on that particular piece of land, which is more than enough to house the entire GIEPA. But because of these challenges, we are unable to move it. So these are all the things that are affecting our ability to sustain ourselves as a going concern.
So you are proposing that in fact it's better to move to
Moving there, absolutely, yes.
occupy the property.
Yes. And if that investment goes to 35% of $300 million investment, as he said, perhaps with that we do not even need Gambia government's investment. Yes, so that's also.
Thank you, Chairman.
I think the member has a question.
Yes, it's supplementary because you said GIEPA,
Yes.
4 years down the line now. What which level are you at now? This is 4 years now. And also I've seen that this GIEPA is between the 10 meters of the air.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I wonder who owns that land for? Is it the airport or GIEPA? Or you the GIEPA owns it up? Because I've seen the contract, we say 35% for GIEPA and 65% for TAP. But I've not seen anything, I've not seen anything about the airport.
Well, this was supposed to be an economic zone. It's identified within the airport. Well, I don't know now if it, but I think legally the airport is the property of whatever GCAA. However, government demarcated this area as an economic zone, and it was developed with funds from, I think, 4.5 hectares of it, Mr. So, has been developed.
Yes, 4 hectares.
With UNDP funds, and that's what the CEO is making reference to. This was the part that the July 22nd park was based. The undeveloped part is the place where we want to now develop together with TAF to make it an economic zone. And he was going to bring in 100% of the equity, financial equity, and then the land will have been our own share of the equity. But like I said, administratively there has been all these problems of, because I think the original lease was in the name of GIEPA, and now GIEPA has been succeeded by GIEPA. So we had those sort of little legal issues which we are trying to pass.
So
Um,
it's called J27 business
Like-
park.
Yes, J27 is part of
The,
this land. What is the developed part of the land? There are warehouses which the July 27 was using for manufacture, for gold, processing gold dust. So many things were happening in economic activities. And I recall, I think one of the problems we had was there was a land rent of 25 million which accrued over time. And GIEPA was expected to have paid that. But we didn't have custody of the place over that period. So there are a lot of controversies. But as he said, the two ministers have now come together, and it's likely that we will overcome the challenge of the legal how this called lease. And once that is thrashed out, we expect the project to take off because TAF is ready and mobilized the resources for us to undertake this particular thing. So we created a company, special purpose vehicle called GIEPA, which means GIEPA and TAF together, GIEPA. So that's the name of the company. And that company is going to be now the entity that will run the business on behalf of Gambian government and TAF.
So I believe you'll be able to, you already have your memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
All that we have.
Association. I think you should give us a copy of that. I
We will.
believe we accompany, because what you are saying is very critical. You know, a dispensation where law is not regarded, then of course you can do anything. But where law matters, then ownership matters, legalities matter, because anybody can go to the courts in search of one's due rights. So you talk about the land enclosed somewhere. Who really owns the land? And how did GIEPA come to own land and is now going to be the shareholder, and its equity is going to be land. So, you know, that land then becomes GIEPA's very lifeblood. So it means that if anything happens to that land, then GIEPA's investment becomes zero. So you raise.
yes, I think I want to respond to Honorable.
Yeah.
In 2000, there was a project called the Trade Gateway Project. That Trade Gateway Project identifies some areas of the airport and some part of Bond Road, and I think even Sukuta, where this place is, as economic zones. This Trade Gateway Project led to the creation of GIEPA. So government, through civil aviation, assigned the purported land measuring about 168 hectares to the then GIEPA. So that is how we took ownership or possession of that land from the civil aviation. There's actually an existing legally executed assignment between civil aviation and
And you
GIEPA.
can give us a copy of that.
Absolutely, we can provide that to you.
We can
Absolutely.
provide you the copy of that. We can provide you the MOU. We can provide you the joint venture agreement. These three documents are all available.
So what we have done is, because government started the project through the World Bank, all the EIA and asset assessment was done, some structures were built. We felt that as an institution we cannot raise all the necessary capital. So we had a partnership where we will use our land as equity, as our contribution, and we bring in a private investor who will provide the funding to build all these facilities. And the agreement is lasting for about 40 years, after which the whole thing is brought back to GIEPA as an institution.
Any further?
Yes, I think as you mentioned, the land is owned by the
Yes,
and that is owned as a private
investors.
investor.
You said the land was owned by Gibson.
Gibson is
But
owned
now
But now
yes,
transferred.
because
But all the legalities have
Yes,
what been
yes,
declared.
yes, water, yes,
It's
that's
to
the-
give us all those legalities, huh?
of course.
So that we know that we are writing something.
Yes, now my concern here is about the percentage.
Yes.
You only what which is the lifeblood and which is most important. But I've seen 35%, 65% by TAF.
Yes.
So do you have a method that you use to, why is it 35, 65? Because to me, the land is more important, is owned by you.
Absolutely.
So
The land has a residual lifespan of 68 years at the time we were contracting this, because the lease is for 99 years. When we signed the contract with TAF, I think we had a residual lifetime of about 60-something years. Okay, maybe the details we didn't tell you, but I think I mentioned in passing that part of the land has been fully developed with the UNDP project, part undeveloped. 4.5 hectares have been developed and 100 and something plus undeveloped. So during our negotiations, when we established a joint venture, we agreed on what percentage of the revenue should come as part of the developed part and also as part of the undeveloped part. So all these things are in the JV, and when we provide you the joint venture agreement, you will see the details there.
So the concrete details will be in the JV.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the developed part now belongs to GIEPA,
Yes.
Yes.
and that's the developed part that you want to occupy.
And the undeveloped together.
No, I mean in terms of
Yeah, there's a building
Yes,
on
there's a
the
building.
developed
building
site.
that is there
Yes,
which
sir.
you wish to
Yes.
occupy
Exactly.
to serve as an office.
Yes.
And you've been trying to push that
Yes.
as an agenda, but what is the obstacle? What is the constraint? Why are you going to pay another million when you could just say,
Yes.
look, you
I
pay
think
your money?
we, if you look at the park, there's a building that was through the same project, the Trade Gateway project. There was a building that was built for Gamtel, which they are not using. So we are in negotiation with Gamtel to take full ownership of the building, renovate it, and move there as our head office.
So this is concrete. You are no longer engaged in planning. It is concrete.
Yes,
and you're going to do that.
yes, we are going to do
So
that.
this is now.
We've already got secured the board approval to move out. So what we are trying to do now is getting access to the site, get it renovated, bring it to use, and then we will move in.
Okay. So how long do you think that will be?
We're thinking that before the end of this year we will move.
You will not pay another 1 million.
Well, in fact, as the board, we told them to move in within 3 months. So, well, maybe that's not practical for them.
Yeah, but
But the building is solid.
It pushes.
Yes. We didn't want to pay another rent of $1 million.
Absolutely.
okay. Any more, or they continue? We continue with the other element.
Yes, just clarification on the ETLS.
Sorry, Andy?
ETLS.
Oh,
That was the liberalization scheme. When you're talking about levy, you didn't mention about it. Is it a levy connected activity or not?
No, as far as the ETLS is concerned, we know it's at the ministry, they may charge if you don't necessarily a levy. The levy is called the e-commerce levy, that is totally separate. Again, that one is another thing that we should have access to because already there is an ECOWAS levy in place, which has been approved by the National Assembly. And we believe that the whole idea of an ECOWAS levy is to promote trade within ECOWAS. But as we speak, GIEPA has not been able to access that fund. That is different from the ETLS. It's just like the certificate of origin. There is always a fee that you charge to issue those documents. But the levy is not the ETLS. The levy I talked about earlier was on the SIC.
Okay, you'll be able to give us all the details of the different fees and levies that you should leverage.
Yes.
But by virtue of
Yeah.
the policy, current policy, you are unable to do so. So make sure that you prepare
Okay.
and give us those facts.
I need some clarification. If one look and survey, you mentioned that any project you have, there is a component for entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I think, am I
Absolutely.
correct?
You're absolutely right. Yes.
But also you mentioned that the entrepreneurship was not implemented by GIEPA.
Absolutely.
It's implemented by who?
I think mostly you have both from Fast Step and other, they always have their project coordinating unit who will employ parallel staff, and this parallel staff will implement it. But normally what happens is after the life cycle of the project, there is nobody to follow up. And we believe that since we've been given the national mandate to promote and develop entrepreneurship in the Gambia, we should have been empowered, capacitated to implement, so that after the life cycle of the project, there is sustainability. Because all these PCUs that are creating, they die down after the project. We saw all projects doing marching ground. But today, if you go to the ground, whether it's FASTDEP or NEMA, what you will realize, hardly you will find any of those projects functioning. So imagine if GIEPA as an institution signed those marching grant, or GIEPA was capacitated to implement, by now we would have got a continuation, because sustainability is an issue. So we've been working with GIRA. There's a new project in agriculture, and we intend to do the same thing with roads, to tell them that components that belong to entrepreneurship, there's already a government agency created for this purpose. It should be capacitated, not run in parallel. Because the way we see it is like, before the advent of the project, we are mandated to carry out entrepreneurship. When government borrow and bring in money, they create an institution. When the money finishes, they disappear. Then people are expecting us to come back and do the entrepreneurship. And here we are saying that now, we should be capacitated. The part of the implementation, so that at the end of the project cycle, there is proper handing over and continuity.
And I think why, as I said, because why problem is on this sustainability you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Because as an institution, a government institution,
Yes.
that is solely responsible for framework and diplomacy.
Absolutely.
If, as we say, if you are taking the power and the money, I think it's better.
Yes.
Then you can, after the, because we are saying all this, after the face out, you can say,
Yeah, absolutely.
so how do you think you can help you? Because we have to help the government. Because it's for the government. How do you think the community,
I think
the assembly can help you? So that all these projects, that will be implementing them and being sustainable.
I have two practical suggestions. One, as far as GIEPA is concerned, I think we need to intensify our own advocacy. We need to intensify our own advocacy. That's at the level of the institution. But at the level of the NA, National Assembly, I think this is where, before you ratify laws, components that have a direct bearing on investment and entrepreneurship, you can, at the level before the ratification, insist that those components be given to GIEPA or executed in collaboration with GIEPA. Because as a National Assembly, you have the power. Before all these loans are ratified, if you insist on those components, the donors will comply. But if the loans have already been executed, then everybody wants, it's my turf. I'm not giving it to GIEPA. So those are the two practical suggestions that I have in terms of helping us, empowering us to do it.
Yes, I believe the advocacy is the leading work that ought to be done. And hopefully the report we give will guide the minister when it comes to contracting loans. Because usually when they sign with their partners, then either reject it or you accept it in total. So that is where the problem lies. So it means that we must work very hard now with this report and assist us to get all the facts so that this report would be instructive, that when something is being done, these are the benchmarks that must be reflected in each of the agreements. And they will use that as a template. So work out on something and then make sure that we get it and then review it, and that becomes a template in terms of agreements that the government enters into. Those are the ways that we improve the situation. Because the National Assembly rightly can also come up with its own criteria of how to get government to come up with international agreements. So if we can come up with benchmarks that we know that these are invariable, this should be, then we can transform them into templates, and that template will now guide whoever goes into negotiate agreements. Well, we are moving, so can we go to the next concern? Well, we should not dwell on just one. That is now sustainability. That's where we are stuck.
Yes.
So do you have, can you be concrete now? Anything on sustainability? Not theory, but
I think, to be honest, Chairman, with what we have talked about, if it is implemented, we as an institution will not have a sustainability issue.
okay. Can we go to the next element? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead to the next element.
Yes, on the next element, we've talked about the information on the economic zones. As an institution towards the tail end of 2020, we have embarked on working with the Ministry of Trade and also with support from the Ministry of Land. We are trying to acquire sites in all the 5 regions of the country. Currently, as we speak, we have three sites in LRR, 2 are towards the border, the Casamas border, and one is immediately from Kenya before you reach the river, and the other one where the ferryway bridges. We've already launched that in partnership with the EU. We are running economic summer, which is going to be about $48 million project. This has already been approved and is being implemented as we go, as we speak now, because different things already done. They're working on finalizing the plans. This will host storage. It's going to be an agri platform where we'll have storage processing facilities for agricultural produce. So we believe that the post-harvest loss in this country is too much, and having a processing plant and storage plant in that area will capture the catchment area within those surroundings, and it also add value in providing employment and economic benefit to the communities. Another area that we just secured recently is towards the tail end of North Bank. We are working already. We are going to establish an entrepreneurship center at the North Bank. Now, moving on the SIC. SIC is an incentive scheme that we operate as GIEPA. We basically act as a secretariat because there is an incentive committee which is headed by the Permanent Secretary Trade, the Permanent Secretary Finance, GRA Commissioner General, and GIEPA as members. These are the group that reviews the applications and once approved, they forward their recommendations to the Honorable Minister for signing. Now, of late, we could see the impact that SIC has. It has enabled us to, despite the COVID, we focus on domestic investors. We already have this iron ore producing company that is located Kitty, that is already in operational. We have an agricultural farm that is producing onions and lettuce, onions and potatoes in Fonj. We have the banana plantation in CRR. So all these projects, what we look at is we look at the value of the investment, we look at the number of jobs that is going to be created, and we also look at ensure that they have an EIA, environmental impact analysis, to make sure that they do not do any harm to the...
You see, our point is that, yes, good explanation, but in terms of information, we want you to link those projects with export programs and then give us what is the scale that you are actually handling locally. We say roads. How much are we importing?
Yes.
And how much are you producing? So that we can see that there is a strategy that leads you to less import of those roads because you are producing.
Absolutely.
And not only that, we are saying, because that's import substitution. Now, the export, are you exporting? We want to see those institutions that are exporting, and you said, well, this is their export quota this year, so that we know whether they are progressing. Every year you look at a particular institution, you see that this year they've exported this, next year they've increased, the year after that they've increased. Then you see the special investment certificate really impacting on the development of that institution, but also development of the local economy, development of employment. We want you to make those correlations, and it becomes in a report form so that we can concretely see. I think you understand what it is.
Yes, I think we understand that very well, Chairman. And part of our reasons why we are talking about the export tool is that because at the moment, none of the export tools are domiciled in GIEPA. And this has contributed to us being unable to get export data. I will give an example. When we visited our counterpart in Asipek in Senegal, they got real-time information as to the number of exports leaving Senegal, where the trucks are stocked. They can tell you cashew, any product, the quantity and the value. And this is part of our advocacy to recovering all the export tools in GIEPA, because at a button, we will be in a position to know this is the number of certificates of origins we offer issue today, this is the type of product, ETLS, ISRC, we will know all the movements and we could provide real-time information. In terms of, we will go back and try to engage the license holders and they will be able to provide us as to information vis-a-vis what they're expecting. But part of our strategy has also been, we look at the flour mills, which we have supported, and they have one way or help in the availability of flour, as well as in the pricing. But however, during our interactions with them, we also realized two commodities, that is maize and wheat. And we've already engaged agriculture because the value of maize being imported into this country is too much. And this we realize is a crop that is grown in this country. Because all these factories in the animal feeds, they're importing maize overseas to bring in the maize so that is being used to produce the animal feeds. So what we are saying now is, together we're trying to encourage agriculture to provide support, and so that we have a service level agreement between the factories and the farmers that are producing it, so that if they support them, they will produce the maize, and these people will actually be the off-takers. Because we believe that we did a visit in Brazil in 6 months ago, and what we learned in Brazil was we have the same tropics, we have the same type of land, and whatever is grown in Brazil can be grown here. And we feel that Parliament or government will have to help us with the land tenure system, because this is another area that we have in challenges. What we have is the availability of agricultural land to investors. Because if that is the land tenure system is also addressed, then both maize and wheat will not be a problem, because as we speak, we have businesses that are ready to go into production, but unfortunately, land is not available. Now, in terms of the advocacy, I think if I move to the level of advocating.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted him to also highlight how the change that this SIC has also brought to our liquidity. Because he has said those things that are outside our control, but there are those that are within our control. When investments come, we know what kind of investments come, we know the value. I think the threshold is $250,000 US.
Exactly.
And a company, before you enjoy SIC, you must invest a minimum of $250,000. And you must also be able to create a certain number of jobs for the country. Those are all conditions precedent to issuance of SIC. And he also made mention of the fact that we have increased the percentage, which was a one-off.
Yes.
It was a one-off 1%, is it?
No, what you used to charge was $1,000.
$1,000. And
Well, now we have about that we're charging 1% of the investment value.
Which is really helping us. It has really been the, I think, I'm not sure, but I think in the report we highlighted how much we've made in the past year or so. Because $1,000, if people come here and invest, and they have an incentive certificate for 5 years, $1,000 one of it is peanuts. So we decided now, the board, as a board, we decided to do 1% of the investment, and definitely that has turned around our
fortunes.
Our fortunes,
Why? How did you come to the 1%?
Yes, we went through the legal.
Have you done some comparative studies with other jurisdictions and see
Yes, we
what
do.
they do in terms of such a levy? Or would you want to undertake that and see, because just as he has highlighted, we are giving a special investment certificate to somebody who will be free from paying for 5 years. So if you look at how much that person is going to accumulate from this, and comparatively helping GIEPA to survive in order to facilitate greater export promotion, greater investment, well, should be a judicious thing to pursue in giving those certificates. So what is the judicious percentage to actually pay? I think it needs to be studied on the taking, both through comparative analysis, but also through studying the mind, brain work of the investor to see what the investor would believe is just. We should not just leave these things as you said to be stagnant. Since you are talking about survival and sustainability.
Yeah. Mr. So, did we do a comparative analysis between here and Jamñajo, Senegal?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Coming up with revenue scheme, revenue stream for the agency to address the issue of sustainability. We looked within our acts to see what we are permitted to do. And we made several recommendations to the board. The board accepted it and approved it, hence the 1% charge. And there are other areas, revenue streams, that the board also approved, which we haven't activated because we wanted to do in a step approach rather than putting all these charges in one go. The 1% looking nationally here, you find...
the question, the board approved because you convinced the board that this should be implemented.
Yeah,
but you are saying that, well, there is...
I think what have they approved?
No, just allow we are looking at governance now. You tell the board to do something, it does it, and then you end up having a problem with it. Help us to understand.
Yes, we did a board paper and presented to the board as to areas of revenue that can be generated for the agency, which we did. And as for policy guidance, they approve some of these. And the implementation is staggered so that it's not too impactful to the investors at one go. One of the elements that's been activated is the 1%. Looking at the 1% nationally, because you asked for on what basis.
Know that you are helping us to understand your challenges. Now, what is staggering? Can you give concretely something that you should implement or you cannot implement because the investor will be discouraged? It will disrupt the business environment, because that's also your role to promote the business environment. Can you give us an example? If you cannot remember, that's okay. We are trying to understand what the challenges truly are. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. What we mean staggering is that this is the first time we are doing such charges. Rather than coming up with the various areas that have been recommended, I think the board's consideration is like every year to introduce one of the revenue generation scheme, just as the tax reduction, from 31% to what it is now, 20% has been done in a staggered way. To just being sensitive to the investors. Now, the question that's been asked, the 1%, what is it based on? We looked at nationally and internationally. Nationally here, if you look at it, a lot of the levies are within the range of 2% to 0.5% range. So we choose 1%. If you look at other institutions like GT Board, for instance, are charging, at first I think it was 10%, now 5% of a similar nature. So we've been very sensitive to that, and then we decided to take the lower level of charging 1% of the investment that's been planned. And if you look at the institutions like the National Environment Agency, they are charging 1% of the investments for national environment issues. So nationally, we are within range in terms of percentages. Internationally, if you look at it, normally facilitation fees tends to be at that 1% range, 2 to 0.5% range. If you look at banks, when they're facilitating the transfer of funds or beyond borders, tends to be within that 1% range. So we decided that we can start with this, and as our economy becomes competitive, then we can revise these figures, because you have to measure it with how competitive your economy is.
Yes, I hope that you'll be able to give us what you recommended to the board in terms of sustainability, so that we can also look into that.
And may I also say, internationally, if you look at the Republic of Ireland,
Go ahead, finish it.
if you look at the Republic of Ireland, their legislators made the decision to charge, to take 1% of the government budget revenue generated and devote it to investment promotion and facilitations. So this is examples nationally and internationally, and it is very crucial to the sustainability of GIEPA. When you read our mandate, it's always nice to hear it over and over again, but it reinforces that GIEPA is the only institution across government where the expectation is higher to propel economic growth and development. And that cannot be done in the absence of resources. We've seen other countries that have done very successfully, and none of them depend on government subvention because it's expensive. But the agency is in a position to generate its own revenue, whereas other institutions may not have that latitude. An investment promotion agency have enough latitude to generate all the resources they need to undertake economic growth, as Ireland has demonstrated. And today it's called a miracle. But they've devoted that 1%. It tends to be more in certain years, but 1% is dedicated. And thank God, there's been a foresight in the development of GIEPA, where our funds, the funds are appropriated from the National Assembly as stated in the Act. And we need to see the full implementations of that rather than us having to debate our budget through ministries. Thank you.
I just want to know whether there is an auditor's view on that issue.
Yeah?
Auditor's view
Yes,
on that issue.
yes,
He was highlighted.
yes.
1%.
You want to raise it?
Yeah, I say I just want to hear from the auditors.
Well, you want to drag the auditors into the conversation, unless you have the auditor's report, because I've seen that on property, plant and equipment, they were raising this issue of building, and saying that cost as per fixed assets register, 76 million for building, 242,442 what it cost as per trial balance, 83,604,73. I think the auditors are trying to ensure that there is fixed assets register and that there is proper reconciliation on a continuous basis. In order to protect the assets, because I think. So you've seen you accepted that, that was already accepted, and I think you are acting on it now.
Yes.
From the comments that we have seen, that you're not going to take your asset registers lightly in order to protect them from unnecessary depreciation, it seems. So you, in terms of the issue of sustainability. Yeah. Well, auditors, you are free. We don't
Mr.
want to
Chairman,
drag
thank you
you.
very much. I didn't want to be drawn, as you rightly mentioned, but I just want to make something clear. The 1% or minimum levy has got its advantages and disadvantages. It is money you're getting with very little effort. That's one. But on the other side, if the organization, I'm not saying it isn't, if it's not efficient, the 1% will not come in when it's supposed to be. So it has to be a system whereby from application, everybody is quite clear as to the milestones that will be achieved, and within what time frame the applications will be determined. Meaning, a would-be investor goes to GIEPA today, they should be able to tell that within 2 weeks, within a month, within 3 weeks, within 4 months, everything will be done and dusted. If that's not the case, even with the 1%, the investment will not flow in on time. In summary, I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, I'm not passing judgment on the organization. I'm saying the minimum levy is perhaps a means to an end, not an end in itself. So the organization has to be rooted in terms of proper governance, accountability, probity, and all the measures. Timely recording, timely reporting, providing the information. I think those are challenges the organization has. So even if it collects the 1%, how soon will that 1% be accountable and brought to this August budget? So I think the bedrock, first of all, has to be efficiency and transparency. So no two investors will feel that when I darken the doors of GIEPA, this is what I'm going to get. They should be unequivocal. They should be very clear as to what they'll achieve, given that they provide all the documents. Just a passing comment.
Thank you very much. I think the essence, as I rightly said, we do not want to go auditors into such an inquiry per se, because they have already done theirs and they know the institution, they know the institution. But one thing that is very important is how to ensure that your receivables are received when they are supposed to be received, and that you do not come and say that, well, you still have them outstanding year in, year out. I think that is really what is clear now, that the machinery must be there for efficient collection of revenue in order, or income, in order to ensure that there is better performance. What you may...
I had my hand up just before he came, it's like it hit my mind.
Yes.
There was an issue that maybe we forgot to mention when we talked about our sustainability.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, and I think he's perfectly right that, like the saying goes, to whom what is given, what is expected. We have had challenges in the past few years also with regards to attrition, and that again points, is based on the level of subvention we receive from government. We've had a number of our senior staff leaving. Sometimes when there are vacancies, we advertise. It's difficult to even have the right caliber of people, both the caliber and of course the numbers. So that has been a major challenge. It is too soon for us to measure the impact of the 1% increase, but it is the view of the board, and I think with what has been demonstrated this year or the past year, I think we should be able to address that bottleneck that he's talking about. That was the real problem. Investors will bring in their applications, and then there used to be a backlog, and of course that affected investor confidence and motivation. But I can assure you that things have now changed for the better, and we will see that addressed as we go along.
Yes, well, you know the importance, let's look at page 14 of the, just to buttress on 14 of the 2019 management letter. Okay, and it is saying, so it's saying 8.1, we observe that the fixed assets register is not comprehensive, since information such as the assets, locations, employees, assigned, and identification code were not indicated in the register. Additionally, we noted that most of the assets were not physically tagged with unique identification number, and according to them, still not resolved. This was 14 December 2018. So I hope it is now resolved. Inadequate insurance cover. We noted the building and furniture and fittings were heavily underinsured against fire and allied perils and burglary. The sum insured was, and it mentioned the sum, 940 million, etc., when one is dealing with 110 million. So those are issues that they say still not resolved. So I guess what we are pointing at is for GIEPA as the key guide for investment to really put its house in order also in all aspects, especially the assets that it is going to rely on for its sustainability. Those ones should be guarded like the apple of its eye. Well, board, there is a member of your team that is raising hand. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. On the question of sustainability for the institution, what is really critical here, and I think it's been proposed by my chairman, is the issue of our mandates being executed or implemented by other agencies. This is a problem that has cut across in many areas. And I'd like to make a suggestion, if I will be allowed to make that, and that is that we have a very important platform where this can be addressed, and is the PACPEC here. Institutions that comes to report here.
Public Enterprise Committee now, before it was PACPEC, when we separated, and now the Finance and Public Account Committee is on its own, and Public Enterprise Committee is on its own. So
Yes,
now we are dealing with the Public Enterprise Committee. What do you want to
Thank
address?
you. And the suggestion is that when institution presents their report here, questions or scrutiny needs to be made as to their activities, whether it aligns with their mandate. And
we are very much doing that now.
Thank you very much. And there is also discussions around regarding the agency itself, as we are an agency at the moment, needs to look into whether we can be elevated to a commission or authority, whether that can really help us undertake and deliver the expectations on the mandate that the institutions is currently shouldering.
Legislative reform.
Currently, the GIEPA Act is under review, and I'm sure during our deliberations we will try and make sure the National Assembly is part of the process.
Yes, you are giving us information now. We can come part of our recommendation. That recommendation will guide the National Assembly members in scrutinizing any legislation that may come. So, so always, yes, if you have any
suggestion and the recommendation.
Yeah, you mentioned about benchmarking as well, the institutions with internationally. My CEO mentioned the benchmarking exercise they've done in Senegal. We've seen that there is a lot that we can also elevate ourselves. A lot of studies being done in places like Rwanda and the like. And I think the technical experts that are here also are well aware of what's happening in the region, in the sub-region. The new generation that we are in, particularly post-pandemic, what the agency needs to do.
You are guiding us to move into the new generation. All you need to tell us is what should we do? What are you recommending?
The repositioning of GIEPA needs to be looked into.
So we need a new act.
We are currently reviewing the legislation.
So you are saying that there is need for legislative reform?
Yeah, for sustainability issues.
Yeah, for sustainability issues.
Yeah.
And I think it will be useful to, whatever you have in writing, to make sure that you submit that to us so that it will form part of our recommendation.
Yeah.
It will facilitate your process.
And one last point just to mention, we've been having a lot of deliberations between Minister of Finance, IMF, GRA, regarding the institutions and the investment incentives that we issue it. And I think if the institution is deprived of using physical means to incentivize investment, I think it will really, in my opinion, jeopardize the
You think there is a move towards that direction?
discussions are being underway.
No, that's not already settled.
Okay.
No, that's settled because it was just challenges we had together with the Ministry of
As long as you don't, there are no challenges.
Thank you.
So can you?
Yes, I wanted to respond to the auditor's observation regarding the fixed asset register and the insurance. I think both
Do
are
so in 2 minutes because others are going to come in this room.
Yes,
Exhausted our time.
So I think both have been addressed as we speak now, and will ensure that the detailed fixed asset register is provided. That will also capture not only the assets, their location and category as well. In addition, we will look at the insurance cover as well to ensure that these assets that we purportedly have will be covered as well. So these are things that the rest assured will not appear again.
Thank you very much. You see, auditors, what we do here, so we make sure that they don't appear again. So
Yes.
now we've got a strong promise for some of these people to appear. Members?
Sorry, we quickly with your blessing, just to respond to the word in the place. We have now outlined if your application is in order, within 3 months your SIC will be processed. Where if you submit within a week, we will give you a reply to tell you if you have any missing outstanding document. And in 2021 and the latter part of 2020, we do not have any backlog. As we speak, there is no backlog pending for SIC application. This 1%
Well,
is...
you will management, you will have the opportunity because of our late start.
Yes.
You will have to continue tomorrow to be able to finish with Friday. So the idea is we continue 11 o'clock tomorrow, to finish up business, and we will be able to continue.
Okay.
I know that the process now is just getting details
Absolutely.
from you so that it will form part of our record. And whatever you believe we should use or recommend, make sure that those salient points are put across. And then we will not spend much time in finishing business tomorrow. So members, and you know that your payroll should be attached to your report.
Okay, we'll provide the picture.
Make sure that you take note of that.
We just wanted to clarification. I think the auditor is asking whether it will be required tomorrow.
Well, auditor has been very experienced in our business. I think they've always been with us in short pass. You don't appear like you are summoning you want to be very friendly. So, but it's a partnership that we should continue. We hope that we'll continue the partnership. Members, can you move for adjournment? Yes, it is moved that we adjourn until tomorrow 11 o'clock to complete this meeting. It is moved and seconded that we adjourn until 11 o'clock tomorrow to continue and complete this meeting. Thank you very much, board. Those in favor say aye. So the ayes have it, so we will adjourn it to 11. And please let's come on time so that we can save time and move out of here as early as possible. Thank you very much. Thank you.